What if I told you that an entire city once danced uncontrollably, not for joy, not for celebration, but for reasons so mysterious and disturbing, people collapsed in the streets, and some even died? It sounds like the fevered dream of a medieval poet or the plot of an eerie folktale told by candlelight. But this is no legend. This is the strange and terrifying story of the Dancing Plague of 1518, a historical oddity that left one European city reeling in confusion, fear, and ultimately awe. Our journey begins in the heart of Strasbourg, nestled along the Rhine in what is now modern-day France. The year is 1518, a time when the city's cobbled streets and timbered houses teemed with life, but not the kind we imagine today. Life in medieval Europe was a crucible of hardship. Famine stalked the land, making every harvest a gamble with starvation. Disease lurked in every shadow, from the Black Death to mysterious fevers that could level entire villages overnight. And then there was the weight of religion, an ever-present force, sometimes comforting, sometimes terrifying, shaping every aspect of life. Superstition mingled with faith, and the line between the natural and supernatural was thin, almost non-existent. It's here, in this world of uncertainty and fear, that our story truly begins. On a muggy July morning, when a woman named Frau Trophäa stepped from her home into the bustling street. No one knows what compelled her, perhaps a restless spirit, perhaps an inner torment, or perhaps something even stranger. But she began to dance, not with the measured joy of festival revelers, nor with the practiced grace of a courtly ball. Her movements were jerky, wild, and relentless, as if she were driven by a force outside herself. She swayed, spun, stomped, and twirled, heedless of the curious eyes gathering around her. At first, passers-by watched with bemusement. Was this some new form of penance? An act of devotion? Or perhaps Frau Trophäa had simply lost her mind. Yet as the hours wore on, her dance did not cease, and concern gave way to alarm. She danced through the day and into the night, pausing only for brief, exhausted rests before resuming her frantic movements. By the second day, her feet were blistered and bloodied, her clothes soaked with sweat, but still she danced. And then, something even stranger happened. Others began to join her. As if summoned by an invisible signal, more citizens, first a handful, then dozens, started to dance alongside Frau Trophäa. Men, women, young and old, rich and poor, all swept up in the same uncontrollable urge to move. The city's streets, once orderly and predictable, became a scene of surreal chaos. The dancers moved in waves, sometimes in groups, sometimes alone. Their faces contorted in agony and exhaustion. Some wept as they danced. Others screamed or laughed, but none could stop. Within a week, the number of dancers had swelled to over 100. Witnesses described scenes that bordered on the grotesque, people collapsing from fatigue, only to rise again and continue. Feet became raw and bleeding, yet the urge to dance persisted. By some accounts, the sound of their stamping feet echoed through the city, day and night, like the tolling of a grim bell. As the weeks passed, the dancing epidemic grew even more dire. Some dancers collapsed and never rose again, succumbing to heart attacks, strokes, or sheer exhaustion. The death toll remains uncertain, but contemporary reports suggest that dozens perished. The authorities of Strasbourg, faced with this bizarre crisis, were utterly baffled. Medieval medicine was a mixture of guesswork and superstition, and the city's leaders struggled to find an explanation. Was this a curse from God, a punishment for sin, or perhaps the work of malicious spirits? After consulting with local physicians and clergy, the council settled on a theory. The afflicted must dance it out. The cure, they believed, was to let the mania run its course. To this end, they commandeered public spaces, erecting stages, and hiring musicians to provide accompaniment. Drummers, pipers, and fiddlers were brought in, transforming the streets into a macabre festival. If the authorities hoped that music would soothe the dancers or bring order to the chaos, they were sorely mistaken. The presence of musicians only fueled the frenzy. The rhythm of drums and pipes seemed to drive the dancers to greater heights of madness. The spectacle drew crowds from all over the region, some watching in horror, others in morbid fascination. The city was gripped by a fever, not of the body, but of the mind. As days turned to weeks, the dancing plague showed no signs of abating. The council tried other remedies, prayers, exorcisms, even the construction of a shrine to Saint Vitus, patron saint of epileptics and dancers. The afflicted were marched to the shrine in hopes of divine intervention. Yet for many, the dance continued. So what caused this bizarre epidemic? Centuries later, historians and scientists still puzzle over the dancing plague of 1518. Several theories have arisen, each with its own blend of mystery and intrigue. The first theory is ergot poisoning. Ergot is a hallucinogenic fungus that infects rye and other grains, producing chemicals similar to LSD. When consumed, ergot can cause vivid hallucinations, convulsions, and bizarre behaviors. Some suggest that a contaminated batch of bread could have triggered the dancing frenzy, turning ordinary citizens into unwitting victims of a psychedelic nightmare. The appeal of this theory lies in its scientific clarity. Ergot poisoning has been blamed for other outbreaks of mass hysteria, including the infamous Salem witch trials. Yet there are problems. Ergot poisoning typically causes violent convulsions and physical pain, not coordinated dancing. And the affliction usually strikes individuals, not whole crowds simultaneously. The bread theory, while tantalizing, cannot fully explain the scale and nature of what happened in Strasbourg. The second theory is mass hysteria, or more precisely, mass psychogenic illness. In times of extreme stress, people can experience physical symptoms collectively, triggered by fear, anxiety, and suggestion. Medieval Strasbourg was a city under siege by famine, disease, and the constant threat of spiritual damnation. The psychological pressure was immense. Could the dancing plague have been a kind of communal breakdown where one person's symptoms spread through empathy and imitation? Mass hysteria explains the epidemic's rapid spread, its contagious nature, and its eventual decline. It also fits with other documented cases of dancing manias across Europe during the Middle Ages. But it raises another question. What was it about Strasbourg in 1518 that caused the dam to break so violently? The third theory is religious frenzy. In a world where the supernatural was woven into everyday life, people believed in saints who could heal or curse, in demons who could possess, and in rituals that could avert disaster. Saint Vitus, in particular, was associated with dancing mania. A syndrome known as Saint Vitus's dance appeared in medical texts for centuries. Some believe that the dancing plague began as an outbreak of religious ecstasy, a desperate attempt to invoke divine favor or exorcise evil spirits. In this view, the dancers were caught up in a ritualistic frenzy, driven by collective belief and fear. The authorities' response, building shrines, holding ceremonies, reflects this interpretation. Religion was both the context and the cure. Each theory has its strengths and weaknesses. Ergot poisoning is plausible but incomplete. Mass hysteria is compelling, especially in light of modern psychology, but it leaves us grasping for the root cause. Religious frenzy speaks to the power of belief, but cannot explain why such events erupted so violently in some places and not others. Perhaps the truth lies in a combination of these explanations: a perfect storm of environmental stress, psychological vulnerability, and spiritual anxiety. After nearly 2 months, the dancing plague finally faded. The dancers, spent and broken, gradually returned to normal life. Some never recovered. The city, scarred by the ordeal, struggled to make sense of what had happened. Local chroniclers documented the event in shocked tones, describing it as a spiritual sign, a warning from God, or an omen of worse things to come. The Church, ever eager to interpret divine will, saw in the epidemic a call for repentance and devotion. The shrine to Saint Vitus became a place of pilgrimage where citizens prayed for protection from future outbreaks. Modern historians, with the benefit of hindsight, see the dancing plague as a fascinating case study in mass psychology, a reminder that epidemics are not always born from germs, but from fear, belief, and desperation. The boundaries between body and mind, natural and supernatural, are not as clear as we might wish. In the streets of Strasbourg, those boundaries dissolved, and the city became a stage for one of history's strangest performances. So, what do we make of the dancing plague today? Is it a cautionary tale about the power of suggestion, the dangers of superstition, or the mysteries of the human mind? Or is there something we've missed, some deeper truth lurking in the shadows of history? The people of Strasbourg were not so different from us. They lived with uncertainty, sought meaning in chaos, and tried to wrest control from forces beyond their understanding. Their story reminds us that even the most bizarre events can be rooted in the ordinary struggles of life. The dancing plague has left its mark on culture and imagination. Writers, artists, and musicians have been inspired by its eerie drama. The image of a city caught in a dance of death is both compelling and unsettling, a symbol of what happens when order breaks down and the mind is overwhelmed by forces it cannot comprehend. And so, we return to the question, what caused the dancing plague? Was it poison, mass hysteria, or something supernatural? The answer remains elusive, tucked away in the dusty corners of history. Perhaps the real lesson is that human beings are capable of extraordinary things, sometimes wonderful, sometimes terrifying, when confronted by fear, stress, and the unknown. Sometimes the strangest epidemics are born not from germs, but from fear, belief, and desperation. So, what do you think? Was the dancing plague of 1518 a case of contaminated bread, a psychological breakdown, or a visitation from powers beyond our understanding? Share your thoughts, your theories, and your own oddities in the comments below. If you enjoyed uncovering this bizarre chapter of history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more stories that prove truth is often stranger than fiction. At History Oddities, we dig up the secrets, scandals, and surprises that make the past a place of endless wonder. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and remember, the oddest stories are sometimes the ones that teach us the most.